Hi, this is Phil Blampede of Today River Valley. The western Maine town of Bethel has a character unlike most of the towns in the area, and there's a well-endowed organization, the Bethel Historical Society, that's developed to chronicle and preserve the story of how it got that way. Several years ago, Today River Valley got the former executive director of the Bethel Historical Society, Stan Howe, to give an overview of the town's history. We'll have that after a short message from a local business.
Hi, I'm Roger Whitehouse, owner and designated broker of Riverside Realty in Mexico, Maine. One visit to our office at Riverside Realty, you can look over the entire market through our large selection of listings and the MLS system. And we always have the staff on hand to be sure you get the help you need.
Here's a current listing from Riverside Realty. This is MLS 1315004, a 1900 Victorian in the center of Strong, Maine, with 9 rooms, 5 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a gorgeous wraparound porch, an attached barn with a 2-bay garage on a huge fenced-in yard. Convenient location to stores and very well maintained, listed at $138,000.
Call Riverside Realty at 369-0100. Hope to see you soon.
The town of Bethel, Maine has had a history different than that of many small Maine towns. Starting, as many New England towns, as a farming community, it has grown into a tourist and educational center. Stanley Howe, the former executive director of the Bethel Historical Society, spent many years documenting that history, and a few years ago he sat down to describe it for us.
The original name was Sudbury, Canada, because the soldiers from Sudbury, Massachusetts fought in the Canada campaign of 1690, and Massachusetts was always sending expeditions north because they wanted to get rid of the French Catholic influence. The Puritans didn't like the French Catholic influence, as you know, and so they were constantly sending expeditions out to get rid of this influence, and of course none of them succeeded, and so they had to pay the soldiers with something. And of course the District of Maine was where they gave them land in the District of Maine and their colony, you see. And for many years, they named them what town they came in, what campaign they were involved in. And this was Sudbury, Canada was the Canada campaign of 1690, and they came from Sudbury, Massachusetts.
The early farmers didn't have much luck. In 1781, Bethel, then called Sudbury, Canada, suffered what was to be the last Indian raid in New England. Then, in 1785, the farmers with their fields close to the riverbanks suffered a disastrous flood.
Yeah, in 1781, there was an attack on Sudbury, Canada. 10 families were here at that time, and 3 men were taken off into Quebec and spent time in Quebec jail. And eventually they were released and came back to Bethel. So it was quite a panicky time for Bethel people, because it was people were terrified of Indians. And of course, some people didn't ever come back. They left Bethel and didn't come back. But it was quite a traumatic event for many Bethel people. They were interested in land, as the Indians were, and the people came north for this wonderful farmland near the river, and the land near the river is very rich and very good land, and they decided, well, let's put our farms there. Well, they found out in 1785 that it was not a good idea, because we had a tremendous flood, and it took away all the houses that were on that low land, including my ancestors, Benjamin Russell.
Farming was the mainstay of the town's economy for more than a century, but by the middle of the 19th century, a new business, tourism, was starting to appear.
Farming was very, very important throughout its history. It wasn't probably until the arrival of the railroad in 1851 you began to see the town changing a bit, because you had hotels being built. But of course, the other thing you had is the farmers also took in summer boarders. And so that was also a part of it too. But the railroad was a critical thing in 1851, because it connected Bethel with the outside world, and you began to see the tourist industry come, and that was, of course, a major impetus to its growth and development.
By the 20th century, farming and tourism were making their mark on the community, but a third element, the unique cultural and educational character of Bethel, didn't develop in full until a pioneering psychotherapist and his wealthy patient, both from Cleveland, came to Bethel. That was Dr. John George Gehring, who came to Bethel in the late 19th century and his patient, William Bingham, who arrived about 20 years later. The cultural influence of Gering and the astounding generosity of Bingham, along with other cultured residents and the growth of Gould Academy, led to Bethel's eventually being called the Athens of Oxford County.
William Bingham came in 1911. The clinic started about 1896, and it lasted until about till Gering dies in 1932. The Gerings brought all kinds of interesting people to Bethel, and William Bingham was part of that group. So he spent the summers in Bethel always, and he went to Florida in the wintertime, and had quite a complex down there. But he always loved Bethel. So.
Under the influence of Dr. Gering and his wife Marion, William Bingham gave much of his fortune to building Gould Academy and supporting the growth of the Bethel Inn, which Dr. Gering owned. After he died, Bingham left money to establish the Bingham Foundation, a major supporter even today of local projects, including the Bethel Historical Society.
You got all kinds of people who came because of Gering or some connection with Gering, or some connection with a patient of Gering, you see. So there were all kinds of people who were here all the time. One woman who grew up on Broad Street said millionaires and famous people were a dime a dozen in Bethel during that era, you see. So you see, the Gould Academy has brought all kinds of people here because it has such wonderful facilities. When I was growing up here in the 1950s, it was not unusual to see women in saris and men in turbans and all kinds of people from all over the world here. So it was just incredible how many people there were here from all over the world, and you just never knew what kind of people you were going to meet out on the street. It was just an incredible time to grow up here.
There's more about the history of Bethel in Dr. Howe's book, Bethel, Maine, A Brief History, available from the Bethel Historical Society.